I'm going to say that we're going to go ahead and get started now. So my name's Abby. I'm a senior here at Bates College. I'm studying sociology with a minor in education, and my general education concentration is in the knowledge, action, and public good. I'm not a varsity athlete, but I'm here to moderate this panel today in discussion. First off, we will have our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into everything great. We do have some questions at the beginning, but I really want to hear from you all and what you guys are interested in. Please use the Q&A function and we can kind of go from there. Lily, would you like to get us off started and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lily. I'm a senior this year, and I'm majoring in biology with concentrations in English and the human body. I started my athletic career here at Bates on the field hockey team, and junior year, I decided to switch it up. And so for the past 2 years, I've been on the women's soccer team. And I'm going to send it over to Chris.
Hey everyone, super excited to be here. Ask as many questions as you can. We just really want to, be as helpful as possible. I'm currently a sophomore at Bates. I'm a part of the men's varsity soccer team. I call Atlanta, Georgia home. And at Bates, when I'm not playing soccer, I'm also a tour guide on campus. I'm involved with the investment club and the circus club. I'm going to popcorn it over to Peter.
Hello, I'm Peter Casares, the head coach for swimming and diving here at Bates. This is my 14th year, and I am excited to help out in any way and answer any questions from the coach's perspective. And I'll also throw it over to Jay Hartshorn, our cross-country track and field coach.
My name is Jay Hartshorn. I'm the women's cross country and track and field coach here at Bates. We do work very, very closely with men's cross country and track and field, so I also know all things about that. I have been here for 16 years, and like Peter, which he didn't say, we are both residents of Lewiston, Auburn. We both live in this community.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So our first question of the night is, can students talk a little bit about what sort of academic support services are available to student athletes here at Bates?
I can take a swing at it, and maybe Lily, you can clean up on what I miss. So I think, and this kind of goes without saying, in really any college environment, you can seek out, resources the college has, and that's kind of on your own. So kind of whatever you put in is kind of what you get out of. And I guess that's been my experience at Bates. What comes to mind is the academic resource commons, which we have in the library. So, basically, we have a bunch of tutors there. You can get any help with kind of your classes. We also have TAs for the majority of classes at Bates. So really any help. They'll hold TA hours, as well as the professors will hold office hours. And what's really cool is that at Bates, we have something called an open door policy. So professors are required to basically sit in their office 2 times a week with their door open and just wait for students to kind of come in, ask questions. You can ask them anything from their favorite movie to a really hard econometrics problem, whatever it is. They just love to hear from students. And then kind of find one great resource. We also have something called the math and stats workshop. So if there's really any form of numbers in any of your classes, in the basement of the library, there's kind of a little tutoring hub there as well. You can walk in during hours and get help with what you need. But I'm not sure if I missed anything, Lily.
Just one thing I want to add is that every team or every varsity team on campus does have an assigned faculty liaison. And so that's basically a member of one of the faculty from all of our different Bates departments. And they are kind of assigned to your varsity team to help with anything academic related. So from my experience, the academic liaisons that my teams have really helped with like if we're leaving for games on Friday and the bus leaves during a class time, for example, they'll kind of help you navigate how to talk with the professor about either leaving early or getting notes and how you'll make up the missed time. Additionally, if you have any kind of struggles, like outside of getting help at the ARC, they're a really great resource to help with accessibility and other just kind of personal tutoring. If you're having trouble, really anything academic related, they're really great to go to.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lily and Chris. We actually have our first question of the night from a student. They said, how easy would it be able to walk onto a team? Also, what are the non-varsity athletic options? Does someone want to go ahead and tack that question?
I got it. So it really depends on what sport you do in terms of the walk-on options. The sports I coach, women's cross country, track and field, we have a lot of walk-on options. Other sports like crew probably traditionally have more walk-ons. So I would just encourage students to always start by reaching out to like the coach, and that is on the athletics website. You can find all the coaches' emails. Email is probably the best right now, and just introduce yourself and see what their policy is, because lots of teams do have sort of some open walk-on like tryout stuff, and other teams are a little bit more set with roster size and stuff. So there really are a lot of options. And I think another thing that we've done really well in the last year is to try to open up, as we've had to go virtually, do a lot of options that might just encourage just wellness on campus. And so we're seeing a really big push with that, with just a general wellness program. And I hope that kind of stays, that we really push that side of things as we come out of this and we're together more, that will be doing wellness at the same time.
I also do want to add, I did have experience with going through the walk-on process, and I completely agree, just reaching out and kind of seeing what the sport policies are and kind of how you'll fit in. But definitely all of your teammates or potential teammates will be very welcoming and excited to just have more people on the team.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, so much. So another question is it difficult to make up classwork that was missed due to competitions? I think maybe the student should speak on this. Lily or Chris?
Sure, I can go first. I guess fundamentally, I think that students pursuing playing varsity athletics in college have kind of mastered the time management skills. Knowing if you have a game on this weekend, you have to travel X amount of hours. You kind of have found time to get the work done. That being said, I do know a lot of my teammates and myself included do homework on the bus as we travel to games. So whether that's reading, whether that's trying to crank out some math problems. I can't really write essays on a bus. That's kind of more personal. But you basically find the time. So another really important part is professors, in my experience, have been very great about work. So if you have to miss class for traveling, if you might need an extra day, if you tell them in advance, you're like, hey, this is kind of what my week's going to look like. I have this issue, this kind of conflict with sports. They're normally pretty understanding about it, as long as you kind of don't get to them last minute, because then it's like you procrastinated. So just staying on top of things, I think, is important, and definitely something you get used to as the season goes on and as your years in college go on. But those are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, I really don't have too much to add. I've definitely done homework on the bus. And if, for example, you're going for an away weekend and you're staying in a hotel with your team, there'll definitely be some people that will say, let's meet in the lobby and do homework. And, if you're an upperclassman and there's an underclassman who, is in a major that you're in, you can definitely help kind of with like, not tutoring, but, give them help, make sure everyone gets their work done. It's a team effort for sure.
Great, Lily. Thank you so much. So kind of going back to the walk-on process, Jay, I think that you might be able to answer this better than I could. As a walk-on, how do you make the team? Is there a tryout process?
That's a really interesting question that doesn't necessarily have a specific answer, because every coach gets to decide these things at Bates, which is great. You feel like you have ownership over your program, which is really important. But it's hard to say, like, not to speak for Lily, but she walked onto women's soccer at the same time we had a coaching change that they were looking to add more people, get the roster up, that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's just about, timing and who is the coach and sort of what is going on with the program. But I know all of my colleagues would be really direct and in terms of answering exactly, this is our policy and this is what we do, because all coaches definitely have a policy and a philosophy when it comes to walk-ons.
Yeah, I would just agree 100% with that. I know on our team, we have a benchmark that you have to attain in order to get to that level and make sure that you can be competitive in the conference and on the team. And it's not, it's a worthwhile adventure for you. So you want to be able to play a role and make an impact and also have fun while you're doing it. And so we try to look at that holistic approach when we do ours. But I would just concur with Jay. Talk to the coaches you're interested with. They'll tell you the process.
Great, thanks so much. So this is kind of going back to study abroad, which was one of the questions that we wanted to focus on, and because there's a lot of talk about if student athletes can study abroad. So someone from the crowd asked, how easy is it for a student athlete to study abroad, volunteer, or do research?
I can definitely take this one or start it at least. So I did study abroad my junior year, so last spring. And basically, since I'm on a fall sport team, I can't go when I'm in season. So I went during the winter semester. So typically, whatever season your sport is in, you'll go in the opposite season, kind of during the off season. And basically, any major that really wants to go abroad can make it work. So I'm on the pre-med track, and typically that's kind of, harder to arrange just with labs, but definitely still very easy. The Center for Global Education is really great about helping you through the process and making sure that you're eligible and you'll succeed when you come back and when you're abroad. So my coach really just talked with me about making sure I was keeping up with workouts, having a training packet, trying to make sure, if I found a club team abroad, something like that, just to keep, my foot skills, pretty good. I definitely would say that that's been my experience. It was cut short because of COVID, so a little bit unconventional, but definitely abroad is an option for athletes, non-athletes, anyone interested.
I would love to echo some of Lily's sentiments. At least I can speak for the soccer team. I think the class above me, 100%, the entire class went abroad before them. I think 9 out of 10 of the students did. They really do take advantage of it. And if you want to do a full year program and miss your season, there is someone on my team, they're great above me, that did exercise that just because, they kind of balance the playing time they're going to get with, the benefits of the program. So at the end of the day, you are still getting a college experience, whether or not you want that to be more athletic or more abroad. It's totally flexible as well. And then again, the majority of my teammates do end up playing soccer while they're abroad as well. And our coach has been really good about trying to find them a program. And what's great too is the people that went to those places abroad before you kind of have an idea of who to contact and how to get that ball rolling. So definitely something I think athletes do take advantage of in their off season.
Great, thank you guys. And I think something important to add to is that 60% of our Bates student population does study abroad. I'm not an athlete, like I said. I didn't study abroad, but I found like there was a lot of things to still do on campus. So whether you are an athlete that wants to study abroad, or you're a walk-on, or you don't know, there's not like a one way to go or another. There's not a ton of pressure, and there's a lot of different study abroad options. And I think Ronan just put that in the chat, so definitely check that out.
I would
Yes,
just
Peter.
add it. I'm looking at Jay in the chat here and thinking like we have a sport that goes over both semesters. And one of the things that I think is really unique and awesome about Bates is that, yeah, we have athletes that take a semester off, usually the fall, so that they can be there for the championships in the winter. But we also offer short-term travel abroad programs. So the May term is a great chance, if you don't want to miss out on a season that travels through 2 semesters, to get that experience under your belt too.
Thanks, Peter. That's a great point. So there's a little bit of talk in the chat or in the Q&A about kind of spirit on campus. So I'm going to combine these 2 questions. So is there a lot of emphasis on sports teams at Bates or athletics? Is it a big part of campus? And are students excited about game day? I think it would be both interesting to hear this from the student perspective, but also what the coaches see.
Sure, I
Okay.
can. Oh, no, Peter, you first.
Sorry, Chris. I love our campus on sports weekends. I think there's electricity everywhere. We have a lot of big weekends. We have big game weekend. We've got parents weekend. We have home NESCAC weekends, and every team is playing. You got soccer on at 11, and then football at noon, and then men's soccer at 2, and field hockey at 11. And you just have a sport going on everywhere, and all the coaches are out helping with game management. You've got people traveling to off-campus sites when it's time for cross country at Pineland or squash off campus also. So there's ways to do that and get there. And there's just a lot of energy, and the crowds are big, and the kid and the students are loud, and the coaches are there supporting each other. So I love it. I look forward to our Saturday morning practices ending so we can get out on the field and cheer on our other Bobcats. So I'd give it a big thumbs up. It's a great experience.
There's a particular memory that comes to mind. My freshman year, like 2-3 weeks into the school year, we had a night game on Garcelon in the middle of the week. And I guess we had a decent crowd, but at the beginning of the game, we were playing Bowdoin, but by the end of it, the stands were packed. Students were banging on the bleachers. It was an amazing atmosphere, and I'll definitely never forget it. And I do think Bates students love cheering on other Bates students, whether that's sports, whether that's a cappella, theater, dance, music, you name it. I guess, students love to kind of just cheer on other Bates students. Doesn't really matter what it is. So definitely love game day, for sure.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Abby. I just want to emphasize, Chris's point about regardless of what it is, Bates students supporting one another. And I think that's very telling of kind of the tight-knit community that we aim to have here at Bates. And so I definitely think, people will definitely be cheering you on, but also asking you about your game, or, hey, are you ready for it, sort of thing. And I think that it's just a really nice atmosphere to know that you're supported, and people will be cheering you on, regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah, I would say going to sporting events is something that I look forward to almost every weekend, something that I've been missing due to COVID, but sports are somewhat back at Bates, so that's been exciting. I would definitely say it plays a big role. A lot of our fields are central campus, so that's been really nice. So like Chris said, if you're walking to, Commons, which is our dining hall, and there might be a soccer game going on. If you're walking to the gym, there might be a swim meet going on. There's just a lot of ways to kind of go cheer on your teammate or your student athlete friends. So the next sort of question is about training and practices and what this looks like. How do practices and trainings look and look in a student athlete life around like class schedules? What does that sort of play out to be, especially when trying to find one time to fit all schedules?
Definitely, of course. I can take this first. So in a normal year, if I'm, we haven't really had a normal academic schedule, but in a normal year, classes end around 4 p.m. And at least for my team, I think the majority of other sports teams, it starts at 4 p.m. So Bates has this block from 4 to 7:30 when day classes end, and 7:30 when night classes start. Just this gap for students to get dinner, to have practice. So we'll normally have practice from like 4:05 to like 6. You can get dinner, then you can go head off to night class if you have it, or club meetings. And that's kind of the typical I guess day, I would say, as far as practice and class schedules. So yeah.
I just want to add to that, as like from the coach's perspective, this has been the easiest place I've ever coached in order to like fit everything in. One thing that's really unique to Bates is that even our lab classes end at 4. So you never have to have this conversation with the student of like, oh, I have to take this for my major or something I really am interested in. And, you don't have that tug of, well, my team all needs me at this time, but I really want this class. So that's, for me, been such a blessing to know when I go to practice, everybody is going to be there every day, and that they can also be academically, filling all their classes with classes they really want to be in and to be taking.
That's a great point, Jay. Thank you. And Peter, Could you talk a little bit about the swim and diving team? Because I know that sometimes I see those swimmers going to practice at 5 a.m. before class. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, to Jay's point and Chris, it's just, we tend to get the team up and going at 6 a.m. to get in some additional weight and sprint work. And then they come back in the afternoon for another practice. And we've got 8 lanes and 65 kids. So you can't fit everybody in the pool at once. And I think there's other coaches out there. I know tennis does this and other sports, but we'll work with your schedule. So if you have class that ends at 2:30, you can start at 2:45. If you have class that ends at 4, you can start at 4:30. And then everybody's free at 6 a.m. So that just became a really great time for us to get the extra work in. And I know my athletes really appreciate that. But they wanted it and they asked for it. And so we made it happen. And that's kind of the Bates way. Like, if you need to get something done and if you need to train and if you need to get the lift in or in the practice in, there's a way to do it. And our faculty and coaches work together to make sure it works with your schedule.
Yeah, great. That's a great point. Thanks so much. So on a sort of a similar path, can Lily and Chris, can you guys walk us on what kind of, like when you have an away game, what your day sort of looks like a life in the day of a student athlete, but particularly focusing on an away game?
Sure. Yeah, I think an away game during the week versus a weekend does look a little different. But in general, you would kind of start your day as normal. For me, my classes normally are in the morning, so I would go to all of my classes as normal. Definitely go to Commons, get some food throughout the day. But closer to when the bus would be leaving, and your coach will be very clear about when you're expected to be out of the locker room with all of your stuff packed and heading to the bus. So that will kind of be clear. For me, the bus is normally left at like 2, but I would, after kind of getting all my stuff together, I'd run to the trainers. I have shin splints that are very bad. So, do some PT, kind of get loose for the game, and then go back to the locker room, grab my bag that I already packed, and head to the bus. So regardless kind of planning, definitely you want to be organized to make sure that, maybe you pack your bag or you put everything together in your room that you want to take to the locker room the night before or earlier in the day when you have a free minute, excuse me, just to make sure, because you don't want to be the person that forgot their socks or, brought the wrong colored uniform, just kind of silly things like that. So that's kind of how I would go through my day. And then for weekend trips, you just kind of would pack everything beforehand, put it in the locker room. So then you go throughout your day, grab your bag, head on the bus, and then, go for your weekend away.
No, and just so I kind of echo a point we were talking about earlier, right? If that bus leaves at 2 p.m. and you have a 2:30 class that day, just being on top of your schedule. And I know our team makes a point, as soon as we get our class schedule at the beginning of the semester, just email all your professors and kind of let them know conflicts with game day. But that way you can just get on the bus. Normally when you say it's a weekend game, you get to the hotel, settle in, normally have some sort of team meeting before bed, get up the next morning. I normally have like a team breakfast, maybe walk around before you head off to the fields to, get changed and go get the W. But definitely just all that planning you're definitely made aware of in advance to make sure you're where you are supposed to be when you need to be.
Awesome. Thank you. So this next sort of question just I think can be answered by both the coaches and the student athletes. And I do think it depends on the sport, but what does the off season look like?
Well, to be honest with you, the coaches have no idea because we're not allowed to do any coaching in the off season. And that's a strict NCAA Division III rule. When your 19 weeks are up, you're done. You can't work with your athletes anymore. However, our athletes are, in my sport, are coming from 48 weeks of training out of the year. And so they expect a little bit more, need a little bit more. And so we usually just hand out practices or the lifting program and give them some guidelines to follow. And then they find the facilities that fit into their schedules at the right times, and they stay in shape. And I can speak to that a little bit easier than Jay, because Jay's got all seasons covered. So her kids can be there all year long if they want. But yeah, I think it's pretty relaxed. Like you get to tackle the off season the way you want to. And if you have some big goals, you better get after it, because the NESCAC is really competitive. And if you're really just enjoying the sport, then you get to try some new things and stay in shape otherwise.
So our off season, we have a bunch of captains practices throughout the week, and it's part of like an expectation, at least that our team kind of sets. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we'll have a 6 a.m. And then kind of Tuesday, Thursday, guys will get together, we'll play soccer, tennis, do whatever. We just work out when we can. But that's kind of at least what our off season looks like.
Kind of just going a little bit of a different point. And I see it's kind of our next question lined up. So it's kind of a good segue. But in terms of lifting and kind of individual things, oftentimes there's kind of a set expectation for a lift. We have a really great I guess he's kind of like our strength and conditioning coach for all teams. His name is Mike Seltzer. He's really great. So he's done a lot of work to kind of get every team a workout packet that's catered to what muscle groups and kind of movements they need to be the best, most efficient athlete in their sport. And so oftentimes those packets are a large part of off season. And, your team can decide to make lifting groups, just going as friends to lift, or if you prefer individual, that's kind of up to you and kind of the team dynamics. But there's a potential for both, whatever you're comfortable with.
Great, thank you guys. So Peter, you have a question from someone out there. Can you just talk a little bit, just briefly, about what swim looks like? They also had a question about what club water polo looks like. I don't know if you're directly associated with that or not, but could you talk a little bit about maybe how often the swim team practices in season?
Yeah. So, all right. So club water polo, the men have their season in the fall, and they get right into school, and they will have the pool from 6:30 to 8:30 Monday through Thursday, and then scrimmages and games on the weekends. And the men's water polo club won New England championships and went traveling last year to nationals. The women's team does it in the spring, and we're a winter sport with swimming and diving. So when our season ended in March at nationals, they were actually in the water the 3 weeks leading up to that last date, doing the same thing, practices 6:30 to 8:30. And that's the only open time really that was available at the pool. So an active polo team for both swimmers have done it. Both the men have gotten ready for the season by playing polo, and the women have stayed in shape after the season by playing polo. And a lot of times the two teams come together and do a lot. In terms of my season, we practice 9 times a week, 3 mornings, 5 afternoons, and a Saturday. And we do that for our 15, 16 weeks, and then get ready for a big championship at the end of the year, and then off to nationals. Does that cover everything?
Yes, great, thanks. So can people talk a little bit about what some of the biggest, most popular sports are on campus? From a student perspective, at least, I don't feel like there's one sport or another that's more popular. I don't know if the student athletes have anything to say about this.
No, I don't think one stands out over the other. I guess it's just more of an interest thing. Like if you're more interested in watching a football game, that's who you are. But at the end of the day, we just love cheering on other athletes. And I think that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, I would really agree with that, and just say that, like what Chris said, like we're all just like a big community, and we're all kind of cheering on one another. Again, whether that's sports or clubs, or arts, we're all really there to support one another. So there's not like one popular one versus another. I would say that I've almost been to every sporting event at Bates, and while I do have my own interests, I do love to go support all my friends. So the next question is, does it look like athletic summer camps will happen this summer?
Fingers crossed. We're contemplating day camps this summer, and that's about as far as we go on. There's a proposal for them, and we hope that they happen and we can get some people back on campus to chase after their dreams a little bit.
Great, thank you. And then on that sort of COVID train a little bit, how do athletic competitions work with COVID? For those of you that don't know, out in the crowd, we are currently in lockdown because there was a rise in some cases. So we've been in lockdown for about a week and a half now. So athletics have not been happening. I'm not an athlete, like I've mentioned a few times, so I don't know if they're going back to sports, but do you guys want to speak upon what it's been like so far?
So I'm probably the coach here that has the most riding on this because we are hoping to compete this spring. And things have been going well since they weren't going well. So we're hopeful that even on Wednesday, we're going to be starting to practice, and with games resuming on Sunday. The biggest sort of really in the weeds things is that we're only competing against people that are COVID testing exactly how we are. So that has made it a little bit like most NESCACs we can compete against, but whether we can compete against a school down the road just has to do with what they're doing for testing in order to keep our whole entire community safe. So we have to do 3 tests a week. Most of those have to be PCR tests. And then plus everybody gets antigen tested on the day of the game. And that would include your officials, the bus drivers, like anybody that our students are going to be coming in contact with are tested on game day. That's like the workers, everybody. So there's a really good plan in place. We've had a couple games. They were exciting. The softball game happened right next to the track. So even though we're not having spectators, I could just walk back and forth quite a bit and catch a lot and still see. It was just so great I've never been so excited to watch a softball game on a halfway decent day in Maine. So I think there's going to be a lot of excitement, and hopefully the next 2 weeks we can get sports playing again, get some NESCAC competition in, and I know it will help even the fall sport athletes feel really, really motivated to train over the summer to get back to playing.
Great, that's awesome to hear. I really do wish you guys all the sports that we can get on campus back again. So that's awesome. Lily, I feel like this question is great for you to answer just because you played 2 varsity sports, but you also play club hockey. So a student had a question. During the off season, are athletes allowed to play intramurals for the same sport in order to keep playing? Or can you play a different club or intramural sport?
Great question. So, when you're in season for your varsity sport, you're in season. But during the off season, you are definitely allowed to play a club sport or an intramural. And I think also I should kind of break down the 3 levels of competition that we offer here at Bates. So we do have the varsity level, which is our highest level of competition. We also have club, and then we have intramural. So that's kind of like the range that we have. So I do play club ice hockey as well. And so basically my fall sport coaches, the rule is after our season is done, then I can start practices with the club team. And there was another part of this that I wanted to talk about, but I forgot. Let's see. Multiple club sports. You can definitely play multiple club sports. There's no limit. And same with intramural as well. So for example, there's, I think quite a few of the club teams are, like there's club soccer and just, for example, club field hockey, all sorts of different things. So if you don't want to play at the varsity level, there's definitely options for club as well as intramural, depending on what you're comfortable with.
Great, thank you, Lily. I knew you had some nice info on that since you're very involved in the club sports, but also the varsity sports. So while we're on topic with the clubs, Do you guys as student athletes feel like you have enough time for clubs during in season?
100%. And I think this goes true to just all Bates athletes and people who are at Bates are not athletes. People love to take on a lot, love to try new things. And as we mentioned earlier, having practice between that 4 to 7:30 window makes club meetings possible because people will have all of their activities, maybe that's art, dance, or practice during that period, and then club meetings will normally meet, outside of those practice windows. So definitely clubs are, a huge part of what athletes take advantage of on campus.
And one other thing that I'd like to add is that just because you're an athlete, that doesn't mean that's all you are. So it's very rare for students to just be an athlete. Like Chris and I, we're both, we work in admissions. We're also part of lots of different clubs and organizations. So Bates is a really great place for you to take advantage of all the opportunities that you have and to really be a well-rounded student, athlete, person in general, and definitely take advantage of that.
I'll just piggyback on that for a second and just tell you that the opportunity to perform doesn't just end on the playing field either. Like we have a lot of athletes and it amazes me because we're doing 9 practices a week that are in a cappella groups or in theater. And the whole team will show up to support them in those adventures also. And so those are always great things to see. And then we've had other athletes start clubs on campus and be involved in clubs. And so if you want to go out and do it, you might have to learn how to juggle a lot, but it can happen. And there's people here that want to support you as you go after that.
That's a great point. Thank you. So this is for any of you guys, but when do fall preseasons typically start? And if some of you guys know, we have an orientation trip called ASOP. And so if you are part of a varsity sport or you're walking on, do you get to go to that or do you have to miss it?
So I guess thinking back to my freshman year, we had, I think, 2 days right before our season started. That was our official preseason. And that is when students do go on their ASOP trip. So at least in my experience, fall sport athletes were not able to go on ASOP trips. But I did hear that a couple of students did get permission from their coaches to do that. I forget what teams they were on. But for the most part, I do not believe fall athletes take part in ASOP trips.
That was my team. So sorry. Women's cross country, we always do ASOP trips. You have to train the whole entire year. So 2 days of preseason does not make or break us when we're training towards November. But also we're sort of losing track of things because this year wasn't a normal year, but they did change our academic calendar, and that is going to change a little bit our preseason and maybe ASOPs and that kind of stuff. So I don't think actually any of us have the real correct answer to that because the new academic calendar just started this year and we didn't have a normal to go. So that's something athletics can definitely get back to you about as we figure out when school's starting this year and what's actually going to happen.
Awesome. And on the note of that, sort of like in the fall athletics, will fall athletes arrive earlier than other students in the fall?
No. So fall athletes, just like every incoming first year, will arrive and move in during their move-in day, get settled in their dorm and go through some orientation events that all first years go through. And once those students will leave for their ASOP trip, that's really when preseason will start. It does depend on the team, of course, but that's kind of the experience that I've had. And once all of the ASOP students come back to campus, preseason will be over and classes will start and you'll kind of be in your fall routine. So that's one thing, is that everyone, will say, as everyone's getting on ASOP and kind of getting to know their new classmates, you'll kind of have that chance to really get to know one another on your team during preseason. That's not to say you won't meet other people, but that's just kind of how I had my first introduction to Bates.
Great, thank you, Lily. So this is more of a housing sort of question. So this might be towards the students, but do athletes typically room together?
I would say in my experience in freshman year, you basically take a survey. Do you like the room hot or cold? Or are you a messy, a clean person, right? Simple stuff like that. And there's also little paragraphs. You type a little bit about yourself. And Bates will actually assign you a roommate. And I know people who have been like, I want a room with an athlete just because of similar schedules, and that pairings kind of happen. I would say it's pretty rare it's the same team, although it does happen. But then after that, you kind of get the choice for your sophomore, junior, and senior year. And typically, teammates do like to live together. I personally don't. I see those guys enough. I love them to death. But I also have a separate friend group, so I am rooming with other people. So you kind of see both sides of the coin. But typically, athletes, I would say, teammates do tend to live together.
Yeah, in my freshman year, I just happened to be paired with another athlete, a spring athlete, and it was great. They kind of understood and respected. Like in the fall, I was really just going all over the place because I was in season, and I kind of reciprocated that respect for her in the spring. But most of my teammates weren't roomed or weren't paired with athletes, and they had a really great experience. So it's definitely not something freshman year that's typical for you to live with a teammate or another athlete. It's all random.
Great, thanks, Lily. So we only have 2 more minutes, but I want to get to one last question. And that question is, for fall sports, are there indoor facilities to practice in if it's too snowy?
Sure. So there are two in a normal year when we have gray cage, and sometimes there's turf down on that before ice hockey season. So you can go in there. We kind of have a little practice in there. And then gray cage. Sorry, I just talked about gray cage. Underhill Arena, forgive me. The ice hockey arena, they'll put turf over that, and there'll be indoor practices there. And then gray cage, which is kind of like an indoor, basketball court. It's not a basketball court though. It's like that kind of material, cement-ish. But we can also have practices in there as well. Those are kind of the two indoor facilities for us outside of the weight room and the indoor track.
There's also an indoor pool, which is important in Maine. And I believe the baseball and softball team have indoor batting cages in addition to the gray cage and Underhill. So there's a lot of indoor facilities. We know how to do the cold weather really well. And we have turf on 2 fields. So our maintenance crew is out there making those places pristine so that you can stay out as long as possible.
Yeah, from my experience, knock on wood, fall towards the end of the fall, it does get a lot colder, maybe some frost on the ground, but snow, it's not as typical in the fall than in the spring. I will say that. But we do have lots of great facilities to accommodate whatever happens with the weather.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That does wrap up our panel for tonight. It is 7:45. We ask that the students, you guys can put your emails in, as well as the coaches if you want prospective students reaching out to you right in the chat. So if you did have specific questions, I know I left some unanswered about soccer. Please do reach out to Chris or Lily about that, as well as the coaches. I think they'd be happy to help you. That does wrap it up for the night. So we'll just wait until you guys all log off. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you guys are excited to come to Bates. So thank you.